Press release of World Spiritual Assembly. A confederation of the Assembly of the World Religious and Spiritual Leaders. Press release dated February 14, 2022. Press release title, 1400 years ago miracles of the revelation of Holy Glorious Quran predicted the 9/11 Twin Tower attack, and it was revealed to God's beloved Prophet Hazrat Mohammad, SM, in Surah Taubah verse 109 and 110. An incident/occurrence shall take place to a big tower-like building in a great city near estuary of 2 river banks, which shall engulf in fire of hell. The human being is the crowned creation of Almighty God. The descendants of Prophet Abraham, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, are cousin brothers in accordance to the Holy Quran. In Islam there are no extremist or terroristic ideology. Islam resembles peace. Final warning to world leaders, heads of states and superpowers: they must stop all of the camouflaging game against Islam. Soon the crown prince of peace, the great Imam Mahdi, PBUH, and Jesus Christ, PBUH, the true Messiah, will appear to lead the humanity to co-create heaven on earth, which was proclaimed at the Earth Summit venue, Olympic Stadium, in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil on June 6, 1992, in presence of 116 head of states, including world-famous scientists, Nobel laureates, academician, scientists, intellectuals, and religious and spiritual leaders, and 30,000 resourceful participants from around the globe. On the morning of September 11, 2001, the world witnessed one of the deadliest attacks upon one of the thriving nation of the Western world. The United States didn't experience such unprecedented attacks since Pearl Harbor. But surprising and shocking fact was, supposedly a group of Bedouin Arab amateur vigilantes, disciple of bin Laden, had hijacked couple of commercial planes from world's most sophisticated and secured airports of the United States to attack on the Twin Towers. Although there weren't any official police report of the incident, however, the National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States was created by congressional legislation and signed by President George W. Bush in late 2002. The commission were to act as an independent, bipartisan commission, and it was chartered to prepare a full and complete account of the circumstances surrounding the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, including preparedness for and the immediate response to the attacks. The commission is also mandated to provide recommendations designed to guard against future attacks. According to the official record, during the September 11, 2001 attacks, 2,977 people were killed, 19 hijackers committed murder, suicide, and more than 6,000 others were injured. Of the 2,996 total deaths, including the terrorists, 2,763 were in the World Trade Center and the surrounding area, 189 were at the Pentagon, and 44 were in Pennsylvania. The United States, being one of the thriving superpower of the world, equipped with the best intelligence, logistics, technology, and resources, yet still fails to convince majority of its own population that the September 11 attacks mastermind was Osama bin Laden. The commission tried to convince its audience by stating that there were a new kind of terrorism beginning to unfold, especially from 1988 to 1998, when Osama bin Laden declared war and organized the bombing of 2 U.S. embassies, but it fails to articulate on how U.S. played the role to train him in early 80s and his group of militias against the Soviet Union mission in Afghanistan by utilizing Pakistan. It was after this heinous attack that the word terrorist and conspiracy begun to popularize amongst the mainstream media such as CNN, BBC, Fox News, etc. The introduction of the internet from late 90s gave the people to share their thoughts and opinions globally, where 2 commercial planes destroying the Twin Towers sounded absolutely absurd and unheard of. It should be mentioned here that Mr. Minoru Yamasaki was the chief architect of World Trade Center, along with Mr. Fazlur Rahman Khan, also known as father of tubular designs, along with Mr. Seshadri Gupta and other architects assisted the construction of the Twin Towers, but it was Mr. Fazlur Rahman's designed steel tubular structural system that was used as the foundation of the both Twin Towers. It should also be mentioned here that His Eminency Dr. Hazrat M. N. Alam met with Mr. Fazlur Rahman Khan at Jeddah Airport during his early visit in 1981, they discussed about importance of the tubular designs for high-rise buildings. Mr. Seshadri Gupta was an executive assistant to His Eminency Dr. Alam since 1982. He also accompanied Eminency during Eminency's proclamation of Millennium Prophecy heralds a golden age for the arrival of Imam Mahdi and Jesus Christ, LBA, at the Earth Summit venue, Olympic Stadium, in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil on June 6, 1992, in presence of 116 head of states, including world-famous scientists, Nobel laureates, academician, scientists, intellectuals, and religious and spiritual leaders and 30,000 resourceful participants from around the globe. Mr. Seshadri Gupta was also present when Eminency was detained by the Brazilian government and surrounded by tank and military at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil on June 9, 1992 as directed by U.S. President George H. Bush and other influential Arab leaders. After 7 hours detention, Brazilian government compelled to release Eminency by the interference of world leaders and intellectuals, scientists. The steel tubular structural system differed radically from other structures of that time, and its 244 perimeter columns made it one of the most redundant and one of the most resilient skyscrapers. Although the suspicion started with the building number 7, when it wasn't even touched or impacted by the planes nor collided with the other two towers, but building number 7 fell in free fall like controlled demolition. Many survivors had stated they heard explosions in sequence formation one after another when they were inside the building. But the mainstream media never bothered to question or investigate any of the above-mentioned claims. Moreover, they sponsored and promoted the so-called official narrative of the attack. Since September 11, mainstream media constantly been trying to paint any negative activity of Muslims to terrorism and gave rise to Islamophobia. Outcome: Muslims face hate crimes and discrimination across globe. There had been many conspiracy theories of September 11 attack, but amongst all the conspiracy theories there is one that stands out and has some truth in it. According to former U.S. Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, Zionists were responsible for the September 11, 2001 terrorist attack that was committed by Al-Qaeda, which killed nearly 3,000 Americans. McKinney served 6 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1993 to 2003 as a member of the Democratic Party from Georgia. Moreover, the Herald of Scotland writes, 5 Israelis were seen filming as jetliners plowed into the Twin Towers on September 11, 2001. There was ruin and terror in Manhattan, but, over the Hudson River in New Jersey, a handful of men were dancing. As the World Trade Center burned and crumpled, the 5 men celebrated and filmed the worst atrocity ever committed on American soil as it played out before their eyes. 2 of them were Israeli intelligence agents, working for Mossad, and the equivalent of MI6 or the CIA. Unfortunately, the mainstream media fails to report on their discovery, and arrest is a matter of indisputable fact. It should be mentioned here that the following conspiracies does not have valid sources to authenticate its claims. 1. Over 500 Jewish employees did not go to work on the day of the attack, and 2. According to various claims, the words Jurafin Har mentioned in the verses of Surah Taubah correlates directly with one of the street names where the Twin Towers were located. Unfortunately, there aren't any authentic sources that can be used to validate the above-mentioned 2 claims. Moreover, according to Cleveland Jewish newspaper, published at least 17 individuals' name and details as well as their proof of Jewish identities. His Eminency Dr. Hazrat Shah Sufi M.N. Alam, 43rd direct descendant from the Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Mohammad, S.M., PBUH, states in his 2nd edition of the Millennium Prophecy Statement book, that during his visit to Saudi Arabia in 2010, a 5-star Army personnel Major General of Saudi Defense Army Sheikh Abdur Rahman al-Madani wanted to meet him and discuss New York's Twin Tower attack being predicted in the Holy Quran in Surah Taubah verse 109 and 110. Quran verses, English translation. Surah Taubah, is it then he who laid the foundation of his building on taqwa to Allah and his good pleasure better, or he who laid the foundation of his building on the brink of an undetermined precipice ready to crumble down, so that it crumbled to pieces with him into the fire of hell, and Allah guides not the people who are the wrongdoers. Verse 109, the building which they built will never cease to be a cause of hypocrisy and doubt in their hearts unless their hearts are cut to pieces. And Allah is all-knowing, all-wise, verse 110. Many scholars and Islamic speakers have tried to explain their version of the meaning of the above two verses' connection to the Twin Tower attack. However, to base any connection, the reader needs to understand the context and background of this two verses' advent to Holy Prophet Hazrat Mohammad, SM. Verse of the Quran can be broken down into few categories, such as literal, metaphorical, or logical. For literal meanings, there are many coincidences of this two verses and to the events. For example, Twin Towers had 110 stories, total number of letters found in Taubah Surah are exactly 2001, and verse spoke of building built in river bank near a hole. This is correct. Twin Towers were constructed near Hudson and East River Bank and there was huge sinkhole next to the Twin Towers. On metaphorical note, the verses were revealed during when munafiqs of Medina tried to conspire against Prophet Muhammad, SM, by building a third mosque even though there were two other mosques located in Medina. The munafiqs wanted the third mosque to hold secret meetings to plan and conspire against Prophet Muhammad, SM, although they were permitted to build the mosque. Prophet Muhammad, SM, never led any prayer nor attended the mosque. Later at the time of the Battle of Tabuk in Medina in the 9th year of the Hijrah the surah was revealed, specially verse 109 and 110. Whence metaphoric meaning applied as per those two verse on Twin Tower attack, it can be comprehended that Israel was behind the attack to initiate the conspiracy against the Muslims and Arabs so that Israel can ultimately establish itself as the dominant figure amongst the Arabs. The verses also can imply that, so-called civilized and advanced nation, West, built this building to show their superiority but their supremacy was not based on truth and righteousness, hence both the towers were destroyed and Israel conspiring to destroy it, to create and spread the ultimate propaganda against the Muslim to establish itself as the superpower entity of the Arab world and ultimately paving the way for their so-called Messiah Antichrist, Dajjal, but the resurrection of Prophet Jesus Christ along with the advent of Imam Mahdi, peace be upon them, will destroy and eliminate their so-called Messiah Antichrist, Dajjal. A columnist for the Jordanian newspaper Al-Dustur wrote an article at the end of September in which he claimed that the September 11th attacks were planned by the United States National Security Council to prevent the rise of an Arab power in the Middle East that would compete with America, according to the Middle East Media Research Institute, MEMRI. Abd al-Hamid al-Hamshari wrote that since 9/11, the U.S. has brought chaos upon the Middle East region, claiming that it created Al-Qaeda and ISIS to serve the interests of Israel. He said that the U.S. was cultivating the Zionist entity state to give Israel an opportunity to enhance the imbalance in the occupied Palestinian territories in its favor and to build up the Jewish home at the expense of the Palestinian home. He later claims that Americans were taught to hate Arabs and Muslims through the media, which is controlled by the Zionists. In order to bring down the two towers there had to be an effective intelligence element that could plan a terror operation of this sort, he wrote. It was surely planned by the U.S. National Security Council, which apparently decided to extend its control throughout the Middle East so as to divest it of any powerful and influential elements that could shift the balance of power in favor of a rising Arab force, which would compete with the U.S. for hegemony in the region. Therefore, the U.S. acted to destabilize the region by means of terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, which it created and imposed on whomever it wished in the world and especially in the Arab countries, so they would destroy these countries for the benefit of the Hebrew state, which is the U.S. outpost in the Middle East, he concluded. Also Professor Kees van der Pijl, who was formerly head of the university's International Relations Department, expressed that not Saudis, Israelis blew up Twin Towers with help from Zionists in U.S. government. Arabs and Muslims in the United States faced unprecedented hate crimes. The period around 9/11 was the worst time for hate crimes against Arabs and Muslims, according to Brian Levin, director of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University, San Bernardino. The Council on American Islamic Relations, a Muslim civil rights and advocacy group, documented more than 10,000 anti-Muslim bias incidents from 2014 to 2019, and another 6,000 in 2020. The incidents included anti-Muslim hate crimes, discrimination, immigration, travel issues, and school bullying. But by the grace of Almighty Allah, the Muslim population is growing at an accelerated rate, and will more than double from an estimated 3.45 million in 2017 to an estimated 8.1 million in 2050. In the meantime, Muslims are expected to surpass Jews as the second largest religious group. Recollecting, after 22 years it can be observed that, after the September 11, 2011, the foreign policy of United States of America changed dramatically. George W. Bush started all-out war against Afghanistan in the name of terrorism, and somehow he convinced the Congress that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. It should be mentioned here that, Saddam was personal business partner of George H. Bush, father of George W. Bush. Their rivalry can be observed during Saddam's Kuwait invasion and George H. Bush's call for Operation Desert Storm to counter and eliminate Saddam. Unfortunately, George H. Bush was not successful, but his son George W. Bush was successful in eliminating Saddam, but in doing so it destabilized the whole Arab world. Arab Spring took place, conflicts amongst Shia-Sunni led to Syria being invaded, Iran took side of Bashar al-Assad, Libya was invaded, Saudis invaded Yemen. Millions of lives had been perished, millions of people were displaced from their lands. The Saudi monarchy and their associates from UAE, along with some fanatic Jews, influenced by Zionist Israeli agenda, and Christian groups had been working together to sponsor Wahhabism, Salafism, Tablighi, and Jamaat-e-Islami sects, which are directly contributing to the creation of the Muslim terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hezb Tahrir, and Jabhat al-Nusra. They are not Muslims at all, and they are directly destroying the backbone of real truth of Islam. His Eminency Dr. Hazrat Shah Sufi M.N. Alam strongly condemns those that sponsors and promotes propaganda against Islam, especially against the leaders of the superpowers like USA, Russia, China, UK, France, etc. The hypocrite tyrant rulers, heads of states and influential leaders must recall the historic punishments made by Almighty God against the King Namrud during the time of Prophet Abraham, King Pharaoh, Ramses II, during the time of Prophet Moses, Yemeni King Abraha, who attacked the holy Mecca, but he was killed by the Almighty God's spiritual destructive birds called Ababil. Shaddad bin A with Makrandi, who built the city of gold to mimic heaven on planet Earth, but miraculously Almighty God destroyed his vision, mission, and his heavenly architectural kingdom of gold to the ground, as well as the punishments of many so-called powerful oppressors. The tyrant, hypocrite rulers, heads of states and influential leaders must be careful about their political game against the human beings in this planet Earth. The human being is the crowned creation of Almighty God. The descendants of Prophet Abraham, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, are cousin brothers in accordance to the Holy Quran, so why are they fighting with each other? Because of the fanatic belief and malpractice of reality of theology. Muslims, Jews, and Christians do not understand the Prophet Abraham's ideology. No one shall dominate in a war or fight. The fanaticism of so-called Muslims, Christians and Jews, also political dilemma, must stop to avoid the World War III, which is knocking the door according to the current world situation. In Islam there is no extremist ideology. Islam resembles peace, which will be upheld with the arrival of Imam Mahdi, PBUH, the greatest true Messiah, and Jesus Christ, PBUH. Final warning to world leaders, heads of states: they must stop all of the conspiracy against Islam. Soon the Crown Prince of Peace, the great Imam Mahdi, PBUH, and Jesus Christ, PBUH, will appear to lead the humanity to co-create heaven on earth. With the best compliment from the humble servant of Almighty God. Signed and sealed by His Eminency Dr. Hazrat Sheikh Shah Sufi Muhammad Nurul Alam, 43rd direct descendant from the Holy Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, of Islam. President, World Spiritual Assembly, New York, USA. https://worldspiritualassembly.org. Image gallery. Caption: on left, graphical blueprint of the damages caused on the World Trade Centers and other surrounding buildings and structures. On right, picture taken in 1982 of Lower Manhattan of New York City, citing the Hudson River, East River, and Twin Towers. On left, Minoru Yamasaki was an American architect, best known for designing the original World Trade Center in New York City. In middle, Mr. Fazlur Rahman Khan as a Bangladeshi-American structural engineer and architect, who initiated important structural systems for skyscrapers, also known as father of tubular designs. The World Trade Center's foundation was designed according to tubular design of Mr. Fazlur Rahman Khan. On right, Mr. Sheshadri Gupta, one of the assistant architects of World Trade Center. Caption: on left, from the right, His Eminency Dr. M.N. Alam, Dr. Kabir, journalist of NBC News TV channel, Dr. Sheshadri Gupta, after the recording of Eminency's interview with the NBC TV News channel journalist for the proclamation of Millennium Prophecy statement heralds a golden age for the arrival of Imam Mahdi, PBUH, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, PBUH, on May 6, 1990 at the Marriott Hotel of Manhattan, New York City. On right, Eminency with the cameraman of NBC News TV channel. Caption: His Eminency Dr. Hazrat Sheikh Shah Sufi M.N. Alam proclaimed the vision of the Millennium Prophecy statement heralds a golden age, to co-create heaven on earth by the arrival of Imam Mahdi, PBUH, and re-emergence of Jesus Christ, PBUH, at the Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, attending Global Forum Earth Summit in June 3 to June 14 of 1992. Caption: after Eminency's declared vision of Millennium Prophecy statement at Global Earth Summit attended by 116 country leaders, 30,000 participants, heads of states, world Nobel laureates, academician, scientists, intellectuals, and religious and spiritual leaders, Eminency was detained by the Brazilian government and surrounded by tank and military at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil on June 9, 1992, as directed by U.S. President George H. Bush and other influential Arab leaders. After 7-hour detention, Brazilian government compelled to release Eminency by the interference of world leaders and intellectuals, scientists for the support of Eminency by the interference of world leaders and intellectuals, scientists for the support of Eminency.